Hi, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to another segment of Wednesdays with Wendy. I'm so excited tonight. We have a special guest, Njideka. Sorry. We are going to have a discussion tonight talking about caregiving and coping with ambiguous loss. It's a new term for me. I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with the term of ambiguous loss. I've never heard of it until Nneka kind of taught me about it the other day. So I'm excited to have this conversation with her and you all. So please join in if you have questions, if you have comments. Please put them in, and we'll answer them as we go. So with that, I want to turn this over to Nneka and let her introduce herself to everyone.
Hi, good evening. Wendy, thank you for having me. As Wendy mentioned, I'm Nneka Njideka. I'm the founder of Caregiver Consulting and Mediation. And what I do is I work with caregivers to reclaim their life and live a more full and satisfying life. I help them create rituals for self-care. I facilitate delicate family meetings around the roles and responsibilities of caregivers. And then I also help the primary caregiver cope with the medical condition that the person they're caring for has.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you so much for that introduction. And I will let everyone in on something. We actually met because we have that in common. We both have a passion for really helping caregivers really just maximize their overall wellness, right? So really just empowering them. So that's how we actually connected, met, and that's how she came here. So I'm really excited about that. So let's get this started. So, ambiguous loss. Can you tell us what that is? What does that even mean?
Sure. Ambiguous loss is a loss that occurs without closure,
Mm.
without social acknowledgement, without a ritual. There is no verification of death. It remains unclear and it cannot be cured.
Mm.
It's considered to be a loss where the person is absent and present at the same time.
Hmm. Can you unpack that? Absent and present simultaneously.
Sure. So when we think about loss, frequently we think about someone who is deceased. And
Mhm.
so when you have a traditional loss, if you will, you have a communal witnessing. You have a funeral, you have a gathering, you have a memorial, you have a group coming together in support of each other based on the person who has passed away.
Mhm.
And so when we talk about ambiguous loss, there are actually two types of ambiguous loss. The first type is physical absence, but also being psychologically present. So there we have the absent and present part of it. So some examples of being physically absent and psychologically present are if a person is in any type of institutional setting. So
Mhm.
if they're in a nursing home, if they're incarcerated,
Mhm.
or if they're hospitalized for more than just a few days.
Mhm.
They could be in a natural disaster, a catastrophic tragedy, or be adopted, have been adopted, or in foster care.
Okay.
They can also be in the military and maybe missing in the military or become a prisoner of war or some type of terroristic attack.
Mhm.
So, in that capacity, the person is physically absent but psychologically present. We still thinking about them. We have some hope.
Okay. Okay. So the family themselves are experiencing the ambiguous loss because the person is physically gone, but they're constantly on their mind mentally.
Absolutely. And because it's so uncertain,
Mhm.
there's no confirmation of any kind of ending.
Okay. Yeah. Interesting. And so you have no closure,
Right.
basically.
Right.
Interesting. So if a person is missing, so, or they die, right? If a person dies, can you still have can that concept still apply where they're physically not here but mentally still present?
If they die,
Mm-hmm.
so if a person dies, we know where they are.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a communal gathering, a witnessing of the loss.
Mm-hmm.
And in many cases, we've seen the person at the funeral or whatever ritual or memorial service or whatever gathering the family had to come together with extended family, friends, possibly people they attend some spiritual service with, or maybe some co-workers or things of that nature. It's a coming together to sort of all be in agreement of this person is no longer here. Whereas if you have someone who has been kidnapped or is missing, they're physically absent, but you're still kind of in this uncertain space
Mm-hmm.
of are they alive? Are they not?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now, good. Now, you said there were two. Was that just one you mentioned? Okay. What's the second one?
Sure. So the second one is definitely, I think, more related to our conversation we're having today in terms of a psychological absence, but a physical presence. So if a family has experienced a divorce, that person, one person normally, not normally, frequently moves to another location. So they're psychologically absent, but they're still physically present. They're not missing, they're not anything that you're uncertain about. If a person, let's say, has an addiction, so that person is not psychologically present. They're physically present, but because of their addiction, they're not their general self. And so it's a different aspect of them that you're encountering. Also, just in terms of neurological illnesses, this is very common with Parkinson's, traumatic brain injuries, Alzheimer's, and various types of dementias, where the person is physically here, but how we remember them and how we used to interact with them is not there anymore.
Okay.
It's a difference.
Yeah, very interesting. Very interesting. So for caregivers caring for someone who is physically present but mentally or psychologically not there, they can experience both of those, right? At the
Yes.
same time, because psychologically they're thinking about them or maybe stressing about them, and then physically they're there, right?
Correct. Very correct. And especially with chronic medical conditions
Mhm.
or mental illnesses. So depending on the level of the medical condition, a lot will change about that person.
Yes.
Where you can look at them every day, if you live with them, if they're your husband, if they're your wife, if they're your children, um, you will see them quite frequently. But the person you are accustomed to interacting with is completely different.
Yeah. That
That
is
person is not there.
so interesting. So what I'm thinking about is if someone like personally, right? So if I'm a caregiver, a lot of our members probably watching are possibly caregivers, um, and I have a psychological loss, but I'm physically there. How do you think that impacts my loved one with cancer or my loved one who's dealing with whatever illness or diagnosis?
I think the effects of a caregiver or someone who's in close proximity to a person that's dealing with cancer or another type of illness, um, it's a variety of feelings. It could be sorrow. It could be they can isolate themselves because maybe they don't want to interact with other people to have to explain why the person sound different, why the person has lost weight, while they're wearing scarves now because maybe their hair is different.
Mhm.
They could encounter a form of hopelessness,
Mhm.
anxiety, despair,
Mhm.
because it's a lot to digest. It's a lot to process.
Right. No, absolutely. Totally agree with that. Totally agree with that. So, as a caregiver, caring for someone who can, have be psychologically there or physically there or not there, what are some ways that they can deal with that? Because in my mind, I'm thinking it would have to be some sort of self-care, right? So what we do here at Shape Partners, we really empower cancer caregivers to optimize their physical and mental wellness, their overall wellness, right? Because
Hmm.
if you're not mentally or physically sound, then how can you really take care of someone else, right?
Absolutely.
So what are some ways that our caregivers can help cope with ambiguous loss if they're experiencing it as an individual, and then if they're experiencing it with their loved one?
Great question. I think the first uh, tip, if you will, that I think could be super helpful is really kind of just accepting what is,
Mhm.
just really leaning into the space of the here and now and
Yeah.
what it actually is, rather than what it used to be,
Mhm.
what you would like it to be,
Yeah.
and then doing what you can to care for yourself.
Mhm.
And I know for a lot of caregivers, that's a pretty difficult, delicate concept
Yeah.
of caring for yourself. And caring for yourself and doing what you can, I think it's helpful to create some sort of tribe, some sort of community, be it friends or family, who support your self-care plan,
Yeah.
who encourage you and maybe even participate with you in some of those self-care plans.
Yeah.
Be it mhm.
No, sorry, go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
So whether it's meditation, whether it's alone time, because sometimes you just need to be and not do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And just take some time to kind of think through.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes it's being in nature, whether it's some sort of physical activity or exercise, riding your bike or journaling,
Mhm.
but certainly laughter and fun, whatever that means to that person.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And in terms of self-care, I heard this the other day. I don't know where. I think I listen to a lot of podcasts and things like that. They were saying self-care. I know everyone's so tired of hearing about self-care during this pandemic, but self-care really is caring about yourself so when tragedy really hits, you have a foundation, right, to fall back on. So you don't go from like 1 to 10, you go to like 1 to 5 or 1 to 3 because you're really crafting out that self care plan, and not only crafting, but implementing it and living it, right?
Absolutely.
So I think that is so important. And I'm big on talking about giving yourself space and time to do whatever, whether it is to just be or just really think through things or feel what you're feeling, right? Because sometimes things are going on and you're just kind of moving so fast that you're not even truly processing what's going on, right?
Sure.
So
It's the automatic. Oh, I'm sorry.
no, 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 go ahead, go ahead.
It's the automatic nature of the world we live in.
Mm,
Everything is fast now, immediate gratification, right now, hurry up, do it, buy it, eat it.
yes.
Whereas to really be intentional about these 3 days of the week, I'm going to take a bubble bath.
Yep.
And
Yep.
from this time to this time, I'm going to take a bubble bath.
Yeah.
I'm going to go walk in the park. Or I'm just going to sit and listen to the birds.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, and I think that, what you talking about that makes me think of mindfulness. And Lynn says here, oh, so difficult to stay in the now and not look at the past that was better. And you have any comment to that? I have something I want to say, but I want to give you the floor.
It is absolutely difficult. It is absolutely. And I think if we can muster some strength to be creative and create meaning and make memories of right now, so that we take the right now and we combine it with what was. And hopefully by unifying that, it balances where we are, because it still gives us tools to acknowledge and celebrate. So if you're caring for a loved one who is physically present but psychologically absent, and maybe because of where they are now, you no longer can throw that big birthday party. Maybe that large setting and that large venue would be too overwhelming for them, because maybe they are fearful about their appearance, their weight loss, their hair loss. Maybe they're just overwhelmed by too many people and what they may say. So in a case like that, maybe creating an event that's much smaller, that still has the celebratory aspect, but is much smaller, included with people who are aware and understand the needs of the person who's psychologically absent but physically present.
Yes. Yeah. And what I want to add to that is that sometimes the past are better, and I call those golden moments. But if we're so busy about what happened in the past or even the future, you kind of miss out on creating those golden moments. And what I help my caregivers do is really celebrate those better moments that you had in the past. So if someone passed away, right, and you're grieving or dealing with that, how do you celebrate them? How do you celebrate them presently to bring yourself joy and happiness and remember those golden moments or those times you had with them, So
Sure.
thank you for that. I appreciate that comment. Accepting what is one of the toughest challenges in this. Yes. There's no name on that one. Tosh says, I love that. Just be and not do. That is very difficult challenge for me during this time. But when I'm able to do this, I do really good. Nice. Thank you. No, that's awesome. That is awesome. So any other tips for our audience here?
Sure. I think setting boundaries for communication can be super helpful. I think really sharing that you prefer communication via text, via email, via telephone, or maybe for some people, an actual letter in the post office. In terms of thinking about how much space you think you may need, and really having the fortitude to verbalize that.
Yes. Telling people what you need and what you want, when you need it and when you want it.
And what communication mechanism works best for you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I totally agree with that. And one thing I was, talking to an actual patient about was people, when you're in transition, whether it's a diagnosis or whether you're transitioning into a caregiver role, people know this, right? So people are kind of transitioning with you, right? So when you create those boundaries and you verbalize it, they can accept it because they understand that you're in transition. Something is happening. You're not the person you was, yesterday or a month ago or a year ago, or if you had a loss, people are aware of that. So, setting those boundaries and speaking what you need, people should definitely respect that because you're all in transition. What else do you have for us tonight?
So, creating space to feel big emotions without allowing others to judge you. And I think, I'm sorry?
I said, can you unpack that one a little bit?
Sure. When you're talking about a medical condition, whether it's the person with the diagnoses or the person who's assisting or caring for that person, you feel a lot of different emotions. Fearful, anger, all kinds of emotions. And And I think it's really helpful if we could create space to feel those and not stuff them down or not avoid them, but really step into them. And in doing that, talk to family and friends who, again, understand and are open, who are going to be compassionate, really speak to you with loving kindness. You can also participate in a support group, or you can make an appointment with a therapist so that you have all your bases covered.
Right. Yeah. And I think time and space is so important to really, like you said, assess what you need, because sometimes you just don't know. And it changes. It may change, today you may need one thing, tomorrow may be something totally different. And that's okay. That's okay. But really allowing yourself to, tap into yourself. I always say pause, right? And give yourself time to really process. No, that's a good one. Any more?
Sure. My last tip is ask for and accept help as needed.
And say that again.
Sure. Ask for and accept help as needed. Because sometimes, especially as women, right, we can get into this, I got it. Oh, I got it. Oh, I don't need, no, I'm fine. When we're actually not fine, we need help. And just think about structuring that help. So if it's 4 days on a particular, 4 hours on a particular day, be able to say, hey, I know you asked if there was anything you could do. Are you available on Tuesday from 2 to 6? Think in terms of structuring it. If you feel like you want some time away just to be, or maybe you want to do something in your garden without an interruption. Maybe you want to be able to take a bubble bath and know no one's going to be calling you.
Yes, no, absolutely. We have
sorry,
go ahead. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I'm sorry. Because when you ask for help, you're caring for yourself and you're caring for the person you're assisting. Because the better you are, the better they are. Maybe you want to go to the dentist and you need that block of time. Because you want to care for yourself so you can give whatever assistance that's needed and required and have the energy and the capacity to do that while balancing what you need to.
Yes. Yeah. No, absolutely. And we discussed this a little while ago about what is the goal, right, of asking for help? Why would you ask someone for help? And then how does that relate to your reality? So if that goal can be filled, how can that maybe improve your reality? And then what are your options, right? And then in options, really, what are you willing to delegate? Because as a caregiver, you may not be willing to delegate many things, but maybe make a list, right, of maybe I'm okay with someone watching my loved one while they nap, from 4 to 6. Or I'm okay with someone going grocery shopping or picking up the mail or mowing the lawn, but really making a list of what they're okay with.
Absolutely.
And actually doing it. So, yeah, no, that's really good. And asking for help, I mean, even before you're a caregiver, and the example I always talk about is, many people are just so independent, right? Before they become a caregiver or before they become sick or they have a diagnosis. So really trying to transition into, okay, I'm a caregiver or I'm a patient and I need assistance. That can be very, very hard. And that's a gap that I think takes practice to fill. So, maybe even asking for a little something opposed to something big. But again, just remembering that people are aware that you're going through a transition and transitioning with you. So, I'll share a personal story. I have a friend who was recently diagnosed and she's in transition. And, I really sat with it and I told her that I'm in transition too, as your friend, you know? So everyone is in transition at the same time.
Mhm.
So, I know what you're going through. If you need something, I'm there, right? So same thing, with caregivers. If people really know what's going on there, and I always say, if they reach their hand out to you, reach back.
Mhm.
Reach back. So, and yes, Lynn says, so difficult to ask for help, especially women. Ooh, Lynn, I would love for you to unpack that, especially women comment. We have a couple of other comments here I'm going to put on the screen. Facebook user, there's no name attached to this. Empathy, so important during caregiving and after caregiving. Recovery is a journey. Even if your family member is in remission, they may be emotionally still scarred. Empathy and patience, because they may not be ready to celebrate life and feel renewed so quickly after such a traumatic experience. Yes. Yes. Anything to say about that comment? Yeah, I think with this comment, I have two thoughts. One is, uh, as a caregiver, you're dealing with a lot, and especially in the research, it shows that when your loved one goes into remission, a cancer caregiver specifically, I'm talking to, that the caregivers, depression, anxiety, emotional state is really heightened when that loved one goes into a remission, where the loved one on the other hand may be in remission, maybe not thinking about it, or they may be, right, or they have their own things they're dealing with, but in the research shows that the caregiver has a more difficult time emotionally than the actual patient who's in remission.
Mm.
So I think, even with remission, it still comes, some things you're dealing with, and I think, so right, empathy and patience is
Mhm.
essential, but it takes practice. It takes practice
Mhm.
too, right? So we have another comment here. Creating space to feel without judgment. Being a patient with the diagnosis. This can be a real struggle by processing feelings while worrying about how others are viewing you while processing.
Mm.
Hmm. Any comment there?
Can you say that again for me, please?
So, creating space to feel without judgment, being a patient with the diagnosis, this can be a real struggle while processing feelings, while worrying about how others are viewing you while processing.
Yeah.
So, this person, they're saying, being the patient, I'm assuming here, and struggling with processing, but worrying about people judging them processing, or how people are viewing them going through their process.
Yeah. It's this is difficult and delicate,
Mhm.
and there are no easy answers to a lot of it. It's about each person stepping into what works for them
Mhm.
and leaning into that space so that through expressing or stepping back, really having the courage to do what works for them,
Yeah.
because there are no easy answers to caregiving, to having a diagnosis. This is huge,
Yeah. Yeah.
huge.
And I have a question for you. Do you think people, we were talking about resilience a couple of weeks ago, and, they say resilience is going through a difficult situation and really bouncing back. Do you ever really bounce back? What are your thoughts on that?
I think resilience is about living with,
Hmm.
because you're carrying it with you. So then the question becomes, how do you carry it? On some days, it may be a light load. You may even can fit it in your pocket.
Hmm.
On other days, it may be a rolling suitcase that you need another person to help you with. So I think it's really about how do we live with, how in that process we create meaning. And with the understanding that there are going to be some days that are going to be like, wow, everything is great. This is a pretty normal day.
Mhm.
And then there may be some days where you're in bed the whole day, and maybe more than one day. And maybe the next day it'll be better. Maybe not.
Yeah. And that's okay.
And that's okay.
That is okay.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yes.
And I think that's why it's so essential to cultivate that tribe or that group or those friends or family, however big or small, who really understand you, who really respect you, who accept you from moment to moment.
Yes.
And they know that it's going to be a little roller coaster.
Yeah. We're all on it.
Absolutely.
We're all on it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We have some more comments here. Asking and receiving help can bring a lot of anxiety. Yes, no, definitely. That is definitely, especially if you're not a person who's used to asking for help, right?
Absolutely.
I like your term, Wendy, unpack. Women are usually the caregiver in the home to begin with. Asking for help can be seen as a sign of weakness. Yes. Yeah, I think that is true. But I think, the thing is speaking as a woman, who, I do second myself, like asking for help, but you have to practice. Like I need help. I need help, right? And it's how you ask, right? And who you ask. So people who, they know your situation, they're supporting you. So if you ask, they're gonna join in and roll up their sleeves and help. So thank you, Lynn, for unpacking that.
Sure.
Caregivers should feel okay about seeking support for themselves. I have always tried to talk with caregivers separately to encourage this self-help. Yes. And I also think, with caregivers, there's just so much going on. I mean, you walk into a doctor's office, and in a second, as soon as the words leave the doctor's mouth, your whole life changes. And all these thoughts, all these feelings, all these things happen, whether it's psychologically, whether it's physically, right? If you physically break down, and then you leave that office, you go home and you don't know what to do with those emotions. And then you're worried about your loved one, right? So, it like you said, there's no right answer, but it's really trying to sit with all those feelings and prioritizing and what do you need for yourself to really be the best you can be, right?
Right.
Your best at that time, right? Your best at that time.
With the understanding that you won't always be your best.
Right. You're doing the best you can at that time.
At that time.
At that time.
And that varies from moment to moment.
Yes, absolutely. Beautiful explanation of resilience. Love it. Yes, not sure where I would be in so many areas of my life without my tribe. Their love and support. Absolutely. How many people that are watching this have a tribe or support? Put something in the chat, whether it's a word, yes, no, an emoji. Let's see. How many of you actually have a tribe or support? Hard to say yes to help. Yes. Yeah, we have to, especially during this pandemic. I mean, we're in a pandemic where all of our lives are definitely has shifted. So, asking for help is essential because I think this pandemic, a lot of us are learning so much about ourselves where we may say, I need some help. I need to talk to someone. I need, whether it's a therapist, a friend, whether it's another caregiver, so this pandemic is really bringing about a lot of different things for, many people.
It really is. It really, really is. And because the pandemic is still evolving,
Mm-hmm.
all of us are in the throes of still figuring it out and trying to do the best we can from moment to moment and day to day.
Yes. Yes. And I mean, yeah, we're still in the thick of it. I mean,
Mhm.
how many of us are able to still sit with our emotions when
Mhm.
our lives are shifted, right? Personally, you're thinking, even for yourself, this pandemic, this virus, and then your loved one, right? And then maybe your kids or, your other family members or your other responsibilities or, work, not working, being furloughed, being laid off. I mean,
Right.
there's so many dimensions to this pandemic. And I'm saying all that to say that we're all in it. And I don't want to say together, but we all are in it
We are.
together. We're all experiencing it. So we're all shifting. We're all in transition. So when you reach out your hand, someone will definitely meet you.
Mhm.
Definitely meet you.
Mhm.
Um, definitely. Let's see. I don't know what happened. Oh, there we go. Yes. MK has support. Yep, Stephanie. Yes, thank you, Jesus. Yes, for sure. Right here. This is a tribe. Oh, thank you. Thank
Oh.
you. Yes, I have a tribe. Used to doing everything by myself. Lynn. Lynn, you are not by yourself. I am here for you. I'm your tribe,
Mhm.
Lynn. Put an emoji
Mhm.
in that comment box. I'm your tribe. No, this was really good. Um, No, this was awesome. So, Ambiguous Loss, thank you so much for breaking that down and giving me something to think about. Just this whole ambiguous loss, mentally versus physically, and then
Mhm.
really tapping into people to, really assess that. I know we have a lot of healthcare professionals on the like looking in on this meeting. So, maybe looking for ambiguous loss in our patients and our caregivers who we serve
Mm.
on a daily basis would be interesting, or even bringing it up. Like, have they even heard of the term? That's a way to kind of start assessing it. Like, have you ever heard of ambiguous loss? Because I never heard of it until, this time tonight. So thank you so much. Do you have any last parting words for our audience?
Thank you, Wendy, for having me, and I'd like to thank your audience for joining us.
Yes. Thank you, everyone. This was
Sure.
great. We'll have you back at some point.
Sure.
So have a good night. See you all next week. Bye bye.
Bye.